The bright side of addiction is recovery. And the golden thread of hope, compassion, and love stretches through generations. Now, in this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, we're going to look back and look forward as we shine the light of hope on the Smithers family, who represent the founding of the modern addiction treatment and recovery movement. Beginning back in the 1940s, when Bill Wilson and R. Brinkley Smithers were going through treatment for alcoholism at Towns Hospital on New York's Upper West Side. Now, soon after, Bill Wilson would meet Dr. Bob Smith and would start the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, while R. Brinkley Smithers would create the cornerstone of alcoholism treatment and would become the architect of the modern alcoholism movement, spreading the seeds of understanding that alcoholism is a treatable disease and could and should be successfully treated as a medical condition. Now, Brink had extraordinary wealth. His father, Christopher D. Smithers, along with a business partner, founded IBM, and after some 50 times through treatment, Brink found long-term recovery until the time of his passing back in 1994. And he put his money where his heart was, in helping alcoholics get well, starting the Christopher D. Smithers Foundation, whose sole focus was on alcoholism prevention. After Brink's first wife passed away, his second marriage was a perfect match. He married Adele Croce, who worked as a public information director at the National Council on Alcoholism, which Marty Mann founded and Brink funded. Marty, by the way, was the first woman to maintain long-term sobriety in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Brink and Adele had one child, a son born in 1968, named after his grandfather. Well, like his father, young Christopher developed the disease of alcoholism at a young age. Despite his struggles and periods of recovery, Chris became a tireless advocate for alcoholics and addicts around the world, including his work with the United Nations. Chris Smithers married his wife Nikki, and together they had 4 children. The oldest was a girl who was named after her grandfather, Brinkley. Prior to Chris's death from the disease of addiction at the age of 50, his young daughter Brinkley, then a teenager, felt the golden thread. She fell in love with filmmaking and with helping others. She produced a public service video called Hey Charlie, about the rise and fall of a young man who became addicted to alcohol and other drugs. The award-winning video showcased not only her talent, but revealed her deep compassion. Following her dad Chris's death, she produced another video to help heal her wounded heart and navigate the storm of grief. It was called Pancakes. Both can be seen by searching YouTube. On this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, we're going to hear the actual voices of the late R. Brinkley Smithers, his late wife Adele, who continued his work following Brink's passing back in 1994, and from their late son Christopher, commenting on the Foundation's mission and his own personal mission as well. And then we'll meet young Brinkley Smithers, Brink's granddaughter and Chris's daughter, who is now 21 years old and a senior at NYU majoring in filmmaking. She is currently working on a film about her dad. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast, and following 15 years of nightly broadcasts on iHeartRadio here in Seattle, we have now upgraded to a national podcast available to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with clinicians, authors, recovering celebrities, and everyday people in recovery, plus vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends, and amazing stories of everyday recovery. We invite you to enjoy it. We invite you to share it with your friends as well, because recovery is as recovery does. Recovery Coast to Coast is supported generously by Sundown M Ranch, one of the top treatment centers in America. They have successfully treated well over 200,000 adults, adolescents, and families over the past 50 years plus. Looking for a good, solid treatment program anywhere in the country? I can think of none better than Sundown M Ranch outside of Yakima, Washington. They are designed exclusively for the treatment of those who are afflicted with the disease of addiction. They are licensed, they are accredited, they are certified. They are members of NAATP, which is the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, and they subscribe to their stringent code of ethics. I know there's a lot of treatment programs out there, and frankly, there are some of them that just after your money. Not the case with Sundown. Sundown M Ranch is where recovery becomes a reality. You can contact them by email at info@sundown.org. I would like to suggest that you go to their website, www.sundown.org. There you can see for yourself the actual facility, the beautiful grounds, learn about the programs. Treatment at Sundown is abstinence based, 12 steps centered. They provide detox, education, individual therapy, group therapy. They have a comprehensive family program, a great continuing care program for those who leave treatment and go back to the community, recovery enhancement, just all sorts of things. Sundown M Ranch is nationally recognized for its quality programs and professional caregivers. Their staff has been together a long time. You want to find a good treatment program? Find a program where the staff has been together a long time. A program that treats their employees well, pays them well, retains them. That certainly describes Sundown M Ranch. They are located at the mouth of the gorgeous Yakima River Canyon. You can reach them by phone at 1-800-326-7444. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sundown M Ranch. The road to recovery begins at Sundown M Ranch. All right, now let's focus on what I call the golden thread of hope that runs through the Smithers family. Now, as I mentioned, Brink Smithers was the architect of the modern alcoholism movement. He was also one of my mentors. I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Brink and his family and the foundation. I had the opportunity to sit down with him on a number of occasions and talk about his life and his love of recovery. In this archive audio clip, Brink talks about, for him, what it was like and what happened.
Well, I didn't know it at the time because I was in the denial stage, but looking back, I found I had trouble during the Second World War. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done, and fortunately, I was not caught or punished, so I didn't take it seriously. But after the war, I went into partnership with a friend of mine in the automobile business, and I found that he developed alcoholism during the war, and obviously I had. And it was so bad that after a few months working together, we made a pact that one or the other of us had to be sober. So if I had to go to the hospital for help, he'd be sober. And then when I came out and took over, he could start drinking. And if he collapsed after a few months, that was all right. I was there. So we traded back and forth. That's the only way we were able to survive the running of this automobile franchise. That would be in 1946. It became really obvious that I was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. I struggled for a couple of years, but I'd say around 1950, I started to not just go away for a few days, but be hospitalized for a week or so to be, we call it being dried out. But this was at Towns Hospital in New York, and on the charts of my condition, I was definitely known as a chronic alcoholic. And I always said that I'd quit when I had more pain than pleasure. It was very selfish, but that's what I said. And that's what I finally did. Well, finally, about 1953, I decided I was having more pain than pleasure, so I quit, and I thought it was for good. But I did have one more relapse, which was the worst of all, and I took a cruise, and of course that was the wrong thing to do if I wanted to stay sober. But at that time I had DTs on the boat. I saw little men coming through the porthole, and it was kind of scary. I knew they weren't there, but it still was bad. So I got off the boat at St. Thomas and flew back to New York and went back to the town's hospital, and that was it. And right after I was sobered up properly and dried out, I called up my friend Billy Mills, who'd been with me in the automobile business, and had to let him go for inefficiency. And he was glad that I called and said he'd help me. But he was the only person I knew in AA, well, that is. So we worked together for a few days, and then he introduced me to Gab Gardner, who confirmed and talked to me very sensibly about the fact I had a definitely treatable disease, and there was no answer for it except total sobriety. And I got myself a good sponsor then, George McCarthy, who became well known. And after being trained, he became the executive director of the Long Island Council on Alcoholism, which I founded in that same year.
Following his passing in January of 1994, the torch of hope was passed to his wife Adele, who ran the Christopher D. Smithers Foundation to continue his legacy of hope. She appeared a number of times on Recovery Coast to Coast, which began as a nightly radio show that ran for some 15 years on iHeartRadio in Seattle. Now, in this clip, Brink's wife Adele talks about the fact that Brinkley Smithers was one of 10 finalists for the Nobel Peace Prize back in 1989 for his pioneering efforts to reduce the stigma surrounding alcoholism and to educate everyone around the world that alcoholism is medically treatable and that men and women can and do recover.
Being nominated for his work in the field of alcoholism for the Peace Prize was very significant, and it moved him tremendously. Of course, I thought he should have won it. The Dalai Lama beat him out. But he was very, very happy that he was even considered as one of the 10 finalists.
And the golden thread of hope stretches from the patriarch of the modern alcoholism movement, R. Brinkley Smithers, and his wife Adele, through to their son Christopher. Now, their only child, Christopher, was born back in 1968. Sadly, and not surprising, given the hereditary nature of addiction, Chris developed alcoholism early on. Yet he remained loyal to the mission of the foundation. And during his sober times, Chris was a solid advocate for addiction treatment. Now, here in his last public appearance, just a few months before his passing, at the age of 50, Chris talked about his vision for the Smithers Foundation.
We believe that addiction is an illness, and we believe that the way we treat it in this country has got to change. Our foundation, our family foundation, has been doing this since 1952. My dad wanted to try to move the needle to try to make this addiction a real medical problem and not a moral or a problem that needs to be dealt with by just saying no. But illness you can't just say no to. I'd like people to know this is an illness. It could happen to anybody. The way we look at it in this country has got to change. We have to stop calling people addicts and alcoholics. We have to start using the proper terms, that this is a substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder. It would be like calling somebody with autism a retard still. So we've got to change the way we look at it, the way we treat it, and as a culture, the way we go about dealing with it.
Now we fast forward to the summer of 2021. When I saw that powerful video, Hey Charlie, I was really impressed. And I was able to track down young Brinkley Smithers, who was living in Southern California. I flew down to meet with her, and here is that conversation. Visiting with Brinkley Smithers on Recovery Coast to Coast. And of course, in the opening, you heard the voices of R. Brinkley Smithers, who is really my mentor in the field of addiction, and his wife, Adele, and their son, Christopher. And Christopher's daughter, actually, she's one of four children of Christopher. I came across Brinkley on a marvelous video that was done. It was a public service announcement. But you know, when you think of PSAs, you think of maybe a 30-second spot or maybe a 60-second spot. Well, this was about 3.5, maybe 4 minutes, and it was all about addiction. It's called Hey Charlie. The campaign is called Stop the Spiral. Brinkley, first of all, when did you get into making films?
Probably 2017 is when I started. I was interning at Lycat. I mean, before I did do some films with my friends who kind of introduced me to it. And we would just do little home films and just fun stuff like that. But then when I interned at Lycat, Long Island Council for Drug and Alcohol Dependence, I was there in the media department kind of, and I just was like, you know what? I just want to write a PSA. I haven't seen any ones that really stuck out to me, so that's kind of where I went with that.
Why addiction?
It runs in my family. My grandfather, my dad, and I kind of just saw it growing up, and I just got really influenced by it, and I wanted to write a story.
So you are an adult child of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 21.
And it was probably 20 years ago that I saw you in your mother's arms back in your grandmother's home. So it's very, very exciting for me to see the work that you have done. And I certainly invite people to check it out. You can go to the Smithers Foundation website or also stopthespiral.com. Tell me about the genesis of that term and how you came up with that.
So it came up after we made Hey Charlie, the PSA. The whole premise of the film was to raise stigma behind addiction. And though it was an opioid PSA, it also was just, it was about any kind of addiction really, and how it just could start from anywhere, and it could be anyone who deals with it. So it kind of started with him at a party with friends, and then went to him using heroin. But you don't just start at using heroin, you start at having a drink with friends at a party like that. That's where it starts, and then it goes downhill. It's a spiral. So that's kind of how it started.
And the foundation is behind it. The Christopher D. Smithers Foundation, by the way, was the premier foundation, the only foundation in existence that dealt exclusively with alcoholism for many, many years. It was founded back in 1952 by Brinkley Smithers, and Brink had gone through treatment 50 times. Let me say that again, 50 times through treatment. The 51st time, he stayed sober. Addiction is a progressive disease. Recovery is a progressive tradition. Just as addiction is progressive in a negative sense, recovery should be progressive in a positive sense. And to realize that there are so many homes and families that are affected by this, like yours, Brinkley. What was it like growing up in a home with so much addiction?
So much addiction. I wouldn't go and say it's so much addiction, but it was my father who struggled with it, and he was the most amazing role model. But when he was using, that's a whole different side, a whole different person, and it was very eye-opening because you kind of grow up faster and experience things that not a lot of other people would experience, but actually turns out a lot of other people do experience these kind of things.
With Hey Charlie, it's about opioid addiction. Why that as opposed to alcoholism or any other drug addiction?
Because I kind of want to encapsulate kind of the whole of addiction and where the worst case scenario where you can kind of end up, which is, using heroin or, at the end of the day, whether you're addicted to opioids, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, there's always a worst case scenario for each of those. You end up dead. Like, that's the worst case scenario. I just kind of want to encapsulate all those in Hey Charlie. instead of just one.
Addiction is a medical condition and requires medical care, and that's one of the themes of the Smithers Foundation, and that's something that you certainly believe in.
Yes, I do. There's a lot of stigma, again, associated with addiction, and a lot of people think, oh, you chose to be, an alcoholic, you chose to be an addict or whatnot, but, it's not a choice. It's a choice to get better, and you don't have to get better alone, because there are places where you can go to get help, you can go to a doctor, there's medicines you can take, it's like any other disease, like diabetes, like you said, you take insulin for diabetes. You also, go to treatment for
Absolutely.
alcoholism.
You have to manage your recovery in addiction just as you manage your recovery in diabetes and in cancer, any other health condition for that matter.
Yeah.
Your father passed away, what, 3 years ago? 3 years in December, right?
I believe so. It was 2018. It was the very end of 2018. It was actually New Year's.
December 30th, I
Yeah.
believe was the date. In the grieving process, you did another film called Pancakes.
Yes.
And you open that by saying, I'm thankful for the memories, for with memories, no one is really gone.
Mhm.
Pretty powerful for at that time, teenage girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about the making of that and how that helped you in the grieving process.
Yeah. I mean, the whole creating of that project was actually for a final film in one of my classes for NYU. The teacher was like, write something that comes from the heart. I wanted to write about my grieving experience, mainly for myself as a cathartic kind of thing for me. So I kind of just went off it. It was all music based, so no dialogue, but I had the film very memory oriented. So it started off with this daughter making pancakes with her father. Then throughout the film, it shows memories of her with her father and then without. And then at the end, it ends with her making pancakes alone. But there's some sort of joy, but there's some sort of peace with that, because with making pancakes, she has a memory of her father while doing that. And that kind of brings her peace.
Did you make pancakes with your dad?
Yeah, we did. That's why I kind of like went on that route in the sense breakfast in my family was always a really big thing, pancakes in the morning. My dad he loved pancakes. It's really funny, but yeah, that was his favorite kind of breakfast food. So that's kind of when I went off.
You can find that video, incidentally, by going online to YouTube and just typing in Pancakes Brinkley Smithers, and it will show up. So, did achieve the goal, Brinkley, of helping get you through the grief?
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, grief is definitely not linear.
Yeah.
I'm always grieving in a sense, but it definitely helped me process my feelings and getting that across to other people, like showing other people, hey, like this is kind of how I dealt with it. I kind of opened myself up to others with that, yeah.
You don't get over grief, you go through it.
Yeah.
And everybody has to go through it at their own pace. Hopefully, you'll learn a lot from it. You want to do a film, another project about your dad.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that and what you hope to accomplish.
I've been working on it slowly, and it'll take some time, but...
Is that also part of the grieving process?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I want to do it because my father's life was very interesting. I mean, I guess every kid could say that about their dad, but I really feel like it's a story that he never got to share, and I really want to share it. And I think that it'll help others dealing with the same kind of thing. My dad always wanted to erase the stigma in the addiction field, but he never was open about his own struggles with alcoholism because, he held his own stigma, and I don't think he even realized that. And if he did, he just never vocalized it. So I think that whole concept in a film would be really beautiful and actually erase the stigma that he was never able to. I'll just do it for him.
Tell me some things about your dad.
Well, he was the best dad, as every kid probably says about their dad. But yeah, he was such a funny guy, and our family, my friends used to always tell us that, like, you have a perfect family. You guys are always together. Like, it was always my mom, my dad, they were always together, and we my three other siblings, we were always with them. Like we were always travel in a pack, and they'd be like, my friends would be like, "You're never like, your family's so tight knit." Like, whoa, and it was true. Like, it was really the best times when he was sober. And
When he was sober.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when he wasn't, uh, that's just part of the disease, and we never thought he was less of a person when he was going through that, but it was definitely really hard to watch and really hard to have him get help. And yeah,
Where are you now in the making of the film? You're just in the process of writing it?
yeah, I'm in the very beginning stages right now. I'm actually, to help me write that film, I'm collecting all these poems I have from my grief process, and they're not even
Mm.
all about grief, but I think it's really interesting to put in all my thoughts unfiltered, basically, on the paper, and then going through that is going to bring to life, okay, this is what I want to put in my film. So
You are currently a senior at NYU studying film. I had asked you at lunch today where you want to be in 10 years, and you told me having your own production company, and you will be winning an Oscar.
yeah, gotta manifest it.
I mean, I think that's absolutely wonderful. And from what I've seen in Stop the Spiral and also in Pancakes, for someone your age to have that creativity and that talent is freaking amazing. What next happens? Is there a follow up to Stop the Spiral?
There's not a follow-up video to Stop the Spiral, but there is a number where you can call to get help, national hotlines, stuff like that, websites where you can visit. There's a story of the foundation. It talks about LICAD, Long Island Council for Drug and Alcohol Dependence.
Which is a great organization, by the way.
Yes, yes.
I've worked with them many, many years ago, but they were an affiliate of the unfortunately now defunct National Council on Alcoholism, which was founded by Marty Mann way back in the, late 40s, I believe.
Yeah.
It had a number of local affiliates, and the Long Island Council on Alcohol and Drugs has been like at the top of all the affiliates in the country. They do great work.
Yeah.
Great work.
And I would not have been able to make Hey Charlie without them. And through them, I met a great, great producer, director, writer. His name is Robert Smythe. I would have never been able to do Hey Charlie without him as well. He's the one who kind of guided me through the closing stages of writing the script. I had the beat sheet out, and I showed him it, and we kind of teamed up together. Now he's a lifelong friend as well, which is just awesome. We are kind of like a powerhouse making that.
There are no coincidences. There are God incidences.
Exactly.
As people come into your life, and as a result of all of this, the video was done 2-3 years ago.
Yes, in 2017.
And it's still being shown repeatedly.
Yeah, it's shown all over the Long Island. I think the subway systems they show it, or the Long Island Railroad. I think they showed it on the Long Island Railroad.
LIRR. Wow.
Yeah, and they show it at schools in Connecticut and through Long Island.
It's an amazing film. What did it do to your gut making that?
I just felt like I had so much tension built up. So when I wrote it, I felt like I was just spitting out a whole bunch of feelings on a paper, and it was just like a freedom I felt after I wrote it. And then when I saw it come to fruition, I was watching it with my mom. We saw the final cut of it, and we all just started crying because we were like, "Oh, it all started on a paper."
Kind of like a visual poem.
Yeah, that is exactly the way I would put it. That's how I looked at it. When people ask me how, what did you do when writing it, I said it was kind of like writing music, like writing the film, because I didn't look at it like, oh, I was just writing experiences in like some sort of musically paced way.
The Smithers name is synonymous with the addictions field. It goes way back to, the 1950s and even before, and it means quality treatment. What Brink did, in the 60s, he gave $10 million to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital to purchase an upscale mansion on the east side, the Billy Rose Mansion. And what he wanted to do was have a treatment program for indigent alcoholics because they needed to be treated with dignity. And here is this gorgeous mansion on the Upper East Side with basically skid row alcoholics that were getting well, that were treated as human beings, and they were given the same treatment that people with money would get in terms of treatment. So the whole Smithers name and legacy is throughout the field. I don't think there's a single area of the addictions field that hasn't been impacted by something in the Smithers family, the Smithers Foundation, in terms of labor management programs, in terms of medical programs. It's just amazing. And the fact that you now are carrying that forth. I'm not sure even if you realize the mantle that you're carrying.
Yeah, I guess I, in a way, don't really realize the full magnitude of it all, but it definitely is. It's, I don't know. And I don't, there's not really words to describe it. I feel like it's just in my blood almost. It's not that I'm doing it because my family did it or was doing it or is still doing it. It's because I really feel like a need and a want and like a passion too.
Mm. Have you had a relationship at all with any of the treatment people? I know that at Columbia, is there a Smithers program at Columbia?
Yeah, I do know that they have people come in. There's therapists in there for them to talk to. They put them on treatment regimens. They get them into any sort of programs they need to get into. That just opened, I think, like 2 years ago. They just started it.
They have some pretty good treatment people there too. They get the best of the best.
Yeah, no, they have some of the best in the world. They have Dr. Lieberman, Francis Levin. Yeah.
Tell me about your brothers and sisters.
Yeah, so my brother goes to Cornell, the school that my dad went to. So it's really awesome. And he's just kind of working in, the labor industrial school there. And then my sister just graduated high school. She's going to TCU. And my little brother
to study what?
She is studying business.
Okay.
So yeah, they're all just kind of growing into themselves. And my other Nicholas, the youngest, is starting his senior year in high school, and he actually is working with LICAD right now on a little documentary about alcoholism. It's a very short one, but he interviews kids during the pandemic and asks them how did the pandemic affect you drinking wise? Has it made you drinking more, less? It's really interesting. He's also working with Columbia as well with some sort of research treatment stuff, and my other brother has done some research with Columbia as well. So everyone's kind of following in the same footsteps in their own way. It's really interesting.
It's more than interesting. To keep carrying that forth from your great grandfather to Brink to Christopher and then now to your family. And you're splitting time between New York and Southern California.
Yes. My goal, I just kind of want to be bi-coastal. So wherever kind of like work takes me is where I want to go. So, a place in LA and a place in New York. That's very wishful thinking because I'm sure everyone would want to be bi-coastal. But, that is a goal I want.
Yeah, that along with winning the Oscar.
Yes, you know.
And I'm going to predict right here and now that you're going to win an Oscar.
Well, thank you. Manifest it.
Absolutely. As you go on from this point, is there anything left to do with Hey Charlie? I mean, you're still promoting it, correct?
Yeah. So,
it seems to be a timeless message is the reason I ask that.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, they're still showing it in places. It's still, we're waiting to hear back from, it got on 2 shortlists in Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival in 2018. I'm pretty sure it won Best Screenplay. They have so many shortlists and so many names for all of them that I can't even remember the one that my own film was in.
Yeah.
But we're also waiting back to hear from them again because we resubmitted it because they asked us if we could resubmit it again. So we're also waiting to hear back if we want anything again.
For this year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's still going hard. When we first released it, Russell Crowe also retweeted it. Darren Aronofsky. So that was really, really, I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
To be quite honest, I was just like, okay, I didn't see that coming.
Have you done any speaking with the film? Have you shown the film? Have you done a Q&A at all?
Well, actually, yes. So before we released, this is actually a very interesting thing. Before we released it, we wanted to show it to a room full of parents that lost a kid to addiction. So there's about 50 parents in there, I'd say. I didn't want them to know that I was in the room. because I wanted to see their honest reactions, because we didn't want to release it unless we knew that, you know, it actually could make a difference and it wasn't too triggering. So I sat in the back of the room on the couch and just kind of watched everyone watch it. And then at the end, Steve Chasman went up, who runs LICAD, and asked everyone like thoughts, questions, and no one said anything. Everyone was silent, and most of them were crying. And I was like, oh my God. And then one by one, they just all like started raising their hands and saying how much they liked it and enjoyed it and how moving it was and stuff like that. And that was like a very humbling, like, I was just really happy. That was the one audience I cared about the most, because I wanted to make sure that it was okay with them. It was almost like a blessing I needed.
So that was kind of like a focus group.
Yeah, it was. Well, no, the film wasn't focused for parents that lost loved ones. It was kind of focused on, you know.
Yeah, but
everyone.
it was a focus group in the sense of people coming together to look at it so you could see their reaction.
Yeah.
And an honest reaction, honest reflection on the film. Did it turn out the way you wanted it? And if you could do it over, what would you do?
I would not do anything over again. It turned out exactly the way I wanted it. Actually, even better than I kind of envisioned it on my on the paper.
Brinkley, tell me about your dad's reaction to seeing the film.
This is interesting. No, he loved it. I mean, he absolutely loved it. You know, we all were kind of like, my whole family was kind of like, well, not my whole family, like my siblings were so young, they're just like, what is this? But my mom and my dad were kind of tearing up, and we were all just like, wow. And you know, he loved it. That's all I could really say about that. Yeah.
What was his reaction when you first told him, Dad, I'm working on a film with LICAD about addiction?
Oh, he was so excited for me. So excited. He wanted me to do that. Thought that was so cool.
He's pretty proud of you.
Oh yeah, he was so proud of me. Yeah, he would show people that, and be like, my daughter did this, and so yeah, no, he was definitely my number one supporter alongside my mom.
If you could say one thing to your dad now, what would it be?
Oh, I guess one thing off the top of my head, because there's always things that, you know, you want to say and stuff, but that, you know, I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story to the world. And I told him that actually before he passed away. I said, I'm going to make a film about you. And he said, wow, okay. So, no, I would say I'm going to do it.
What do you want to say to young people out there today that are struggling with their addiction? Maybe they've tried a number of times to get well and it hasn't worked.
I'd say progress is not linear, just like grief, just like anything. We're so hard on ourselves all the time. If you know, you're going through recovery and, you know, you relapse, that's okay. You don't have to beat yourself up over it, because no one's perfect. You just get back up and try again. And you just, you know, try your best, and nothing is impossible. You know, you'll overcome it.
Well, relapse does happen to many people, but it doesn't have to happen. And you know, there are a lot of treatment programs that have relapse prevention programs. I don't even like to use the term relapse prevention. I like to use the term recovery enhancement. What are you doing today to better your recovery for tomorrow and to move forward? And, you know, they say it's a simple program, but it's not an easy program. It's a struggle to get well.
Oh, it's one of the hardest things, you know, success and failure and all that combined. Whenever you want to, you know, succeed in something, it's never going to be easy. It's almost going to be the exact opposite. It's going to be one of the hardest times in your life, but the end result is going to be the best thing. So there's always a gift on the other side of struggle, other side of pain.
We will continue the conversation with 21-year-old Brinkley Smithers, daughter of Christopher Smithers, and the granddaughter of R. Brinkley Smithers, who shaped the field of alcoholism prevention, treatment, and recovery. Brinkley will share a fond memory of her dad and will also share a very intimate poem that she wrote about one of his relapses. We will do that in just 30 seconds.
She has always been your baby, but when your daughter got into drugs and alcohol, she turned into a stranger. What do you do? Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown's nationally recognized youth treatment program guides young people back to a life free of drugs and alcohol. All treatment is gender specific and directed by caring certified professionals in a safe environment. You can get your daughter back and get to know her again. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
My conversation with young Brinkley Smithers continues. What's the fondest memory you have of your dad?
You know, I think I'm going to start the film this way. We as a family would always go fishing, and it's something that always like brought us together. We lived on the boat also for a little time. Like, my family loves like anything near the water. I'd say going out I'm going to switch it. It was our last family vacation in the Hamptons, and I actually wrote a poem about this. Our whole family went out to the beach and had a bonfire, and we were all just hanging out on the beach, just roasting marshmallows, and it was just, everything was perfect. And that was like the last perfect moment we all had together.
You don't have that poem with you, do you?
Oh, let me see, actually.
I'd love to have you read it if you do.
I actually might. Oh, I found it.
Okay.
It's called To Dad. Remember when we built that bonfire at the beach? Mom and everyone else was there. As the night went by, the embers floated into the sky. Laying on the sand, counting the stars. That night you held me tight. Soon I was going to be off on my own. You prepared me for it all, but never did I think you'd forget it all. You didn't prepare me for this. I haven't seen you in months. I don't think I'd even recognize you. Where did you go? I'm trying to put myself into your place. But as I pace back and forth, to and fro, I still wonder how you let go. What about the choice you had, knowing what has happened in the past? How could you? However, sometimes I feel the pain that you probably felt often. I wish there was a way where you could tell me everything will be okay. Remember when we built that bonfire at the beach? Probably not. Well, Mom and everyone else was there. As the night went by, the embers floated into the sky. The only difference now is that I didn't know we were saying goodbye.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's beautiful.
And that actually was before he passed away. That was when he just relapsed, and I kind of had a really bad feeling about that one.
Again, he was in and out of treatment for so long, and he had a number of relapses. And each time, did you have that feeling, or was this different?
This one was different. This time I had a different feeling. I felt like it was just that this one definitely wasn't a good one, and it was my freshman year in college, so and I wasn't even at home, so. But yeah, I'd also like to say that even though that poem is sad, it also I found joy in all the pain and stuff. So I'm grateful for all.
And there's something about writing, of getting it down and getting it out.
Yeah, it's really cathartic.
It's very cathartic. When was the last time you saw your dad?
Probably December 15th, 2018.
So a couple of weeks before he passed away.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, you said you were in Aspen?
Yeah.
And tell me about the song.
Oh, yeah. So the morning we found out, we were walking around the street, and I heard, it was really early in the morning, and like the streets were really quiet, and then they just had this music playing in the streets, and it was Yellow by Coldplay. And it was just so, that song always stuck with me. And then when I was making pancakes.
Pancakes, the film, as opposed to making
pancakes.
Yeah, the breakfast.
When I was making the film Pancakes, and I was with my actress, we were in the bathroom, and she was doing a scene in front of the mirror where she was going to cry. And she asked me if I could play a song for her. And I was like, okay, what's the song that's going to evoke these emotions for you? And she was like, can you play Yellow by Coldplay? And it was just such a crazy coincidence, instance, So, yeah.
He did a lot of things internationally with the UN.
Yeah.
Do you know about any of those?
Yeah, we were a part of the Venice Film Festival. We gave out an award there for a film that best portrayed addiction and stuff. He's also because he did so much that sometimes I forget exactly all the things.
He really was a dynamic force in the field.
Yeah.
As was your entire family. And your grandmother, Adele. What do you remember about Adele?
You know, she was just, like you said earlier, she was just like a force to be reckoned with, you know. She always had a smile on her face. Though even when she got mad, she still had a smile on her face. It was really funny. And, you know, she always was there for my dad. And even when she wasn't, you know, in the same, you know, vicinity, you know, she was always, you know, fighting for him.
She was always there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In closing, is there anything else that you want to say? Any message that you want to get across that maybe we haven't touched on?
Through it all, you can always find joy. You know, you can always find joy.
And hope.
And hope, yeah.
And I've always said that in the Smithers family, there is the legacy of hope.
Yeah.
Brink started it, and Brinkley is carrying it forward.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And so the golden thread of hope continues as Brinkley and her siblings continue to carry the message of hope and the promise of recovery. That wraps up this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast, featuring a look back at 3 generations of hope, of help, of compassion, of love. From one of the pioneers in the development of the alcoholism prevention, treatment, and recovery field, R. Brinkley Smithers, through his amazing son Christopher and his efforts, and continuing today with Brink's granddaughter Brinkley, as she not only carries the message, but sends the message that those suffering from addiction can be successfully treated, and that long-term recovery is indeed possible. If you've enjoyed this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast, there are a few things that you could do to help us out. First of all, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. Secondly, leave a short review. It really helps. And lastly, and very kindly, we ask you to tell 1 or 2 of your friends about our podcast. That also helps us to carry the message. Please subscribe to our podcast, and if you get a chance, send me an email at recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to find out your thoughts about the podcast. Maybe you have a suggestion for a guest or a topic we could cover. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And if you know someone who is experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here is a 24-hour national helpline that offers free information and confidential treatment referrals. Spanish-speaking individuals are also available as well on this hotline. 1-800-622-HELP. 1-800-622-4357. And another shout out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, successfully treating individuals, including adolescents and their families, for well over 50 years. Sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, be kind to one another, and remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.